Hey, Michael J.
Another week, another ban.
It is the way of historic, you know? Although, actually, I think they're starting to get to a much better place because this might not be the end of the line, but this is the one, like, the sort of like the one that everybody knew was going to be banned for a long time. And it was like the biggest head scratcher that it moved from suspend to unsuspend. But, man, what do you think the implications are?
So,
who benefits?
So, from my perspective, I honestly didn't think that the card field was that big of a problem in Historic, and then they printed Hour of Promise. Like, I think that's kind of how it fit together.
I don't know, man. First of all, I think that it was like I think you might be underestimating just how much Field of the Dead was a problem, regardless of whether you could beat it. Because I think that the Wizards article about the ban hit the nail on the head. Even though the Field of the Dead decks were rarely overwhelmingly dominant, they were very oppressive. They were very polarizing. Where their good matchups, they would just murder people. Like, it was too hard to play any sort of a mid-range or control game. And that wouldn't be the biggest problem if the Field of the Dead decks were literally just, another fringe deck, 3 or 4%. But they have, ever since it's been back, it's been the most popular deck by a good margin, and it's growing. So you're totally right. Hour of Promise was like, shot it into the stratosphere. But it was going to be a problem eventually anyway. It's just too oppressive specifically to mid-range and control decks. So, I realize a burn player such as yourself is like, oh yeah, player enters the battlefield tapped colorless land.
Well, as a burn player such as myself, and I believe I've actually really enjoyed playing Historic for like the last week or two, and I think done pretty well in it on Magic the Gathering Arena. I'd say I still lost to Field like a good percentage of the time. Maybe not half the time. I was always like mad when I was losing. Not as mad as you get losing a single match of Arena, right? Kind of maybe a little annoyed. But it's not like it was a cakewalk matchup. You would think it would be, right? But the problem is the burn deck is...
Okay. No, I wouldn't think it would be. The Field of the Dead deck's just so strong.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, the burn deck isn't that much more powerful than, say, like, a standard deck, right? It's like standard All-Stars is basically what the burn deck is in Historic. You're like, oh, I get to play kind of the Wizard sub-theme, and I get to play, like some deserts at the same time. Isn't this novel? Pepper with Goblin Chain Whirler as you will. But the Field of the Dead decks they're playing like Hour of Promise, Uro, other powerful accelerations that are probably too good, and then they can do whatever they want. Like the Field of the Dead decks have cards like Wrath of God or Languish, or probably both. I think I played against a deck that had both Wrath of God and Languish before. I think I played against a Field of the Dead deck earlier this week that had the card Ramming Up Ruins, which seemed like a really odd choice to play in Field, which is not thought of as being a red deck. But I was like, well, actually, this is a desert for Hour of Promise, and you can get a Golos activation out of it if that's your thing. So I was just like, well, they do have a wide variety of exceedingly powerful cards. Totally anybody could lose to that strategy, even if it's the kind of deck where you think that you should have a substantial advantage, like you might with a non-interactive red deck.
Yep, but no longer. With Field of the Dead out of the way, it's weird. There isn't even like a clear need to ban a card this week. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, like, if it weren't for meta considerations, if there was literally just no friction, of course Standard would be better without Uro. But, like, it's not a problem, and they can't just go trigger happy in spots where there's actually real exploration. Like, pumping the brakes would be pretty well advised, I think, for see if they can possibly ride it out until the next set.
So I am a little worried about Historic. So I mean, obviously, I'm
Yeah,
super selfish in some ways because I'm like I like playing the red deck a lot.
in some
right?
ways, sure.
So I'm very passionate about playing the red deck. Doing personally like pretty well in historic playing red
I've
decks.
heard that a lot.
Yeah, this podcast I probably mentioned it 3 times. But the thing that I'd say is like we might be in a spot where Gargaroth is just like the best card in historic. Like out of nowhere, it's going to shoot into the stratosphere. It's like this is the new best
Wait,
card.
why? You think it's the best card in historic? You're out of your mind. I'm not. Of course, it's gotten better, but it's not. What you think? It's
better.
Of course, but you think it's even remotely competitive for the best card in historic?
Oh, I mean, the first part of your sentence was I was like, yes, it is more than remotely competitive. I mean, I think all cards considered the best card in historic, I think, is Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath. But I think.
Well, hold on. Let's keep going. Do you think it's one of the 10 best cards? Or was that hyperbole?
Okay,
and
so
I'm just a butt.
Hyperbole, true. What do these words really mean? I just think that there's an outsized incentive to play Eldritch Gargoth, which might not be bad. I mean, when was the last time Baneslayer Angels were good versus Muldrifters being good? So I'm a little supportive of that. But I don't know. The format is kind of weird. It's not balanced in the same way that some of the other formats are, because it's by nature so haphazard, right? It's just like, here are some sets that we released in digital. These cards maybe have never been played in a harmonious format before. Let's see what happens. So I'm not sure. I do think Elder Gargaroth maybe not the best. I think it is probably one of the 10 best though.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I am going to go with against. But, I'm a sucker for cards like Thoughtseize and Muxus. But what do I know?
I've been Thoughtseize this week. I played against Muxus this week. People play those cards. Those are popular cards.
Actually, there were a few historic decks that I wanted to call out from MTG Goldfish. It was actually kind of, wasted no time kind of beginning the evolution. And I wanted to see what you thought of a couple of these, like specifically the one of those enchantment decks that I know you love so much, like the core Spirit Dancer type, but this time Azorius, in order to pack the full set. And this is kind of like a more extreme version of one of the decks we talked about like a month ago, but with 4 Curiosity, 4 Curious Obsession, 4 Staggering Insight. This one's actually just going all in. And then 4 Arcane Flight for all that glitters. And then the support package, it's kind of a eclectic mix. Like, it's not surprising to see Alseid of Life's Bounty and Selfless Savior, so that you can just stack everything and protect it. And Core Spirit Dancer is obviously just like kind of the bee's knees here. But is 2 copies of Dauntless Bodyguard just aspiring to be Selfless Saviors 9 and 10? And are the 2 Adanto Vanguards really the best we can do?
I actually think you just play more Adanto Vanguards and fewer Dauntless Bodyguards. I mean, an Adanto Vanguard wearing a Staggering Insight or has some kind of evasion on it, whether that's, a boost from Alseid of Life's Bounty or, gaining the ability to fly using Arcane Flight or some other, a lot of people play cartouches. I played against a deck like this a lot that had, white and blue cartouches as well.
And this one's using Ornithopter for the extra flying. Yeah,
that's
cool.
No joke, man. Like, all that glitters in a deck that's, turn 1 Ornithopter and, like, maybe if you've got a mana open, you just slam your first Curiosity or something onto it, and then second turn, all that glitters. That's a lot of damage, evasion. If you combine that with Staggering Insight, it could be, like, card advantage, evasion, life gain. I mean, this deck is... It does what it does, and what it does wins games, depending on how the cards line up against the opponent's cards. The thing about this deck is, even in individual matchups, it depends which cards you draw, right? Like, if you draw the cards that are very good against what you're up against, you could just completely snowball them. But the other half of your deck isn't necessarily that effective. Like, if you look at cards like Adanto Vanguard, 1 toughness, Selfless Savior, 1 toughness, All Seed of Life's Bounty, 1 toughness. A Goblin deck, for example, that's packing Goblin Chain Whirler can really mess that draw up. Versus if you draw cards like Adanto Vanguard against maybe like a black-blue based control deck, they might not be able to remove that card, right? Like, it sticks, it hits, and then you kind of pants them up, and you're off to the races. One thing to note in this deck, Luris of the Dream Den is a real deal here, right? You can do
I was thinking the same thing.
Recurring All Seed of Life's Bounty action, or just buying back stagger. Like, so one of the things that this deck does pretty well is you get a threat, you put like some sort of a Curious Obsession, Curiosity onto it. Your opponent deals with it, right? So even if they use 2 cards to deal with it, you're like, all right, I'm going to stack a Shock and a Bone Crusher Giant or something to kill your now 4 toughness creature. You can buy back pieces of that later with Luris of the Dream Den, or you could just Staggering Insight somebody. And Staggering Insight is so impactful if you get even 1 hit in, right? Luris combined with All Seed of Life's Bounty is just like the standard deck, except for, you're combining it with really, really synergistic, powerful elements. Also, the fact that you can mess certain opponents up, like, this deck can very nicely transform into kind of a fish deck, siding in Dive Down, Spell Pierce, and Dovin's Veto. It can go really well against mid-range decks, because, like, the threats in this deck are pretty cheap, right? They're, somewhere between...
By definition, Luris.
0 and 2 mana, right? So you often can, like, expand your battlefield a little bit while still leaving up mana. And so cards like Aether Gust and Baffling End against green mid-range decks actually fit really well into, like, I'm going to do a thing and then do a thing that interacts with you, and then, just keep progressing my battlefield forward a little bit. This deck actually has a lot of angles going for it. The downside on this deck is that it's also a house of cards. Again, you draw the wrong half of the deck against the wrong opponent, or you could get like the all enchantments draw. So like, I got a lot of buff spells. They kill your one guy. That's a spot you might not want to be in.
Dude, I just love how much Luris gets cards back that are so much more valuable than their mana cost. Like, this is a deck that can very realistically have 5 land. It's got 22 to begin with, including a couple Scry lands, but it's also got lots of card draw. It's not unreasonable to, like, part of your plan is that you just set up where you go play Luris and in the same turn get back all that glitters or Staggering Insight. Either one of those is just so high impact. And then when you've got so many ways, all these Selfless Saviors and All Seed of Life's Bounty, when you have so many ways to protect Luris, that's just like, Luris is a really, really good card to protect.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, not for nothing, you think of this deck as kind of, well, I do anyway. I think of this deck as kind of like a radical upgrade to the White Weenie deck from Standard from, maybe 2 Standard cycles ago. But it's a little bit more than that because of the hard lean into the enchantment sub-theme. Core Spirit Dancer is kind of it's like the sub-theme here. It's not like the main thing. Like, the main thing is just like guys in pants, right? Or like getting forward with Curiosity for damage. But Core Spirit Dancer is a card advantage engine, and it gets huge. And if you combine it with All Seed of Life's Bounty or Arcane Flight, it just gets in. You put like 2 All That Glitters on this thing, it's just going to kill you, right? That's a big game, and it's fueling itself constantly. That's the thing that's really exciting about this strategy.
So talk to me more about the Elder Gargaroth. Why is it that you think he's just going to completely dominate the format? First of all, why, if you could spell out a little bit more, what makes it such a positive move, the disappearance of Field of the Dead? So
Field of the Dead basically put you in a situation where, I mean, even like you said before, if Field itself didn't have this hugely disproportionate win rate, it kind of invalidated decks in individual matchups, right? So I'm playing a Field deck, you're playing some sort of a mid-range deck. If you don't have a permission spell anywhere in your 75, you're not really going to be able to stop me from casting cards like Our Promise and generating enormous amounts of value, right? Like, you're talking about...
Plus, even if you have a counterspell, you're not going to stop Field of the Dead if the game stretches. Like, if I get a reasonable draw, you know?
Yeah, you can't stop Field of the Dead long term if you're playing a mid-range deck. You just don't win fast enough, right? So you get in a situation where you might have incredibly high-quality cards, but especially in the games where I'm producing 2 or more zombies per turn, right? Which is any situation where I have 2 fields, right? Like, I have 2 or more zombies per turn coming out. It's really difficult to penetrate my defense, and I'm just spreading permanents. So I could easily have a situation where I'm like, multiple zombies per turn, activating Arch of Araska, right? Like, if you're a mid-range deck, that's just not a tenable situation for you to win. Unless you have extraordinary specialty cards, you know, like, what's the cycling zombie? Like, that's like a trick to win, though, right? That's not like a regular card you'd play. It's very, very specific. Or like some sort of Revenge of the Ravens or something. Now, if you take that element out of the metagame, all of a sudden, these decks that just have high card quality catapult up in terms of their viability in the field, right? So decks that otherwise were like playing Eliminate or Heartless Act, and like, but not in the context of, you know, Eliminate and Heartless Act in some really narrow part of a deck that otherwise is doing really, really powerful things or kind of getting into an inevitable endgame. Now you're creating a format where those cards are just good, right? They're Magic how Garfield intended it to be. You got some creatures, you got some creature removal.
You realize that's not Magic how Garfield intended it to be?
It's not.
The best creatures in Alpha were what? Shivan Dragon and Sedge Troll? Hypnotic Spectre? Birds of Paradise?
Sarah Angel ruled the skies for at least 2 years, right?
Dude. Magic as Garfield intended was untap my Time Vault with that's animate artifacted and instill energied, or maybe Island Sanctuary, or with Hollymont, you know, like.
Look, man, I'm gonna pure lace your Gargaroth, and I've got
Channel Fireball was Magic as Garfield intended.
Okay, well, between the two of us, I'm not the one who sat next to him in the office, so I'll have to take your word for it.
All right.
Point being,
but you know, times change.
You're creating this context where these kind of these are good cards. Like, let's call it the Rock, right? Are now viable in a way that they weren't really a week ago.
Yeah, but that's really good.
I agree, but now
mid-range becoming viable. It's not like, oh no, mid-range is going to run rampant.
No, mid-range doesn't really run rampant.
I know.
Mid-range just lets you play Magic.
I know.
So you got this deck that's like, oh, look at all my relatively efficient creature removal and Bloodbraid Elves, right? Like, here's the kind of Magic that I'm going to play. I just think that Elder Gargaroth is on the very high end of that kind of.
Well, yeah, I told you that. I was going to say
there was a time.
Its rate is just too good.
There was a time
it's not too good, but it's just stronger than Baneslayer Angel.
It's exactly what I was going to say. 2-time Pro Tour champion Brian Kibler once said Baneslayer Angel is the best large creature in the history of Magic. Upon winning his Pro Tour with it, Elder Gargaroth is basically just better than Baneslayer Angel. So you have a card that's just...
It's a little different, but it's
than the best.
Better on the aggregate. It just has more raw rate.
And here's the thing. It's also in a better color when we're talking about historic.
You don't need the qualifier, dude. It's in a better color.
Well,
there are no formats where white is better than green.
Well, I'm saying... Well,
now...
In past years, that might not have been true. But when
we were like, dude, back in the 70s when we were kids, yeah, that's true. But it's been a long time.
When you're trying to get it's teetering on unfair, right? But when you're trying to get a fair 5-drop into play.
No, it's not. It's not teetering.
Okay,
what's teetering on unfair? Grave Titan and Inferno Titan.
Okay.
Those are teetering on unfair.
And Primeval Titan's over the edge, right?
Primeval Titan's demonstrably unfair.
So we're at the high end of fair at 5 with Elder Gargaroth.
No, we're at the very high end.
Very high end of fair. I have that as teetering on unfair, but it's fine.
It's not at risk of falling over, dude.
Okay. But you combine that with the color it's the color of Explore, it's the color of Uro, it's the color of potentially Cultivate. I know Cultivate's not particularly popular in
it's growing.
But like Explore and Uro are hecka popular in this format. You're getting to a situation where there's a
Rose Spiral.
Well,
Yeah.
You speak of words like this, you're just going to get more cards banned, Patrick. Fields of the Dead was chased out of Standard already. Here he is, hanging out in Historic, and then this week happens. So why don't you just keep saying Growth Spiral and remind the people
No. Let me stop. No, forget. I don't know what you're talking about. What I do know is there's a sick new, there's a couple actually sick new Historic decks, one of which is a very... I don't know. It almost defies archetyping. The Standard League from 824 has I mean, every time you see a Niv Mizzet Reborn deck, you always know that you're up for something special. But Random Droolers 5-0 list, this is like a lot of Niv Mizzet Reborn decks have one of this, two of that, try to, This is just this is a Niv Mizzet Reborn deck after your own heart, man. It's just 8 cop. It's just Niv Mizzet, and then there's 7 cards that are 4 copies each, and 28 land. Now, admittedly, nice. I don't know that I've ever seen you play a deck that has just 20 removal spells or whatever, but it's almost like this deck is like a Primeval Titan deck, where there's only like 8 threats, and then like some possible you could argue is kind of a threat, and then the rest is all ramp and land. Only this deck, instead of ramp, it's just all removal spells.
So it's not just removal spells, right?
I mean, Thought Erasure, I guess, is not strictly.
No. Look at this: Hydroid Crassus, Uro Titan.
No, that's the other threat. Your 2 real threats are Hydroid Crassus and Niv Mizzet.
No. Listen to these cards: Hydroid Crassus, Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath, and Deafening Clarion. What do these cards have in common?
What do they have in common?
Life gain.
Dude, we're not all playing red.
I don't play red in Standard, man.
This isn't Standard. This is Historic.
No, this is the Standard League.
Oh my god, dude. Like, I'm saying we should port this bad boy over.
Oh.
I can't believe this. I got bamboozled. I did think it was the Historic, and I was excited. I was like, man, nobody ever does this, but that's probably why.
Imagine you could do this in Standard.
Oh my god. Dude, though, while we're on the topic, though,
I'm
with
in
Standard,
for this thing. This is pretty
I believe you, but why is Eliminate really the best we can do? Is Eliminate so good that like playing with 4 Aether Gusts and 4 Eliminates when 8 of your cards are Simic anyway? Like, this is the softest Niv Mizzet Reborn deck ever, right?
I think Aether Dust and Eliminate could possibly be improved for multicolored cards, just because of Niv Mizzet Reborn. But I mean, Aether Gust is still got a lot of oomph to it. If you think about Standard as a format where like probably the blue-red aggro deck is probably the top deck. You still have some cycling folks out there. Obviously, we talked about the Casualties of War, kind of Uro, blue, black, green deck. Those decks all have vulnerability to Aether Gust, so maybe that's worth it. Eliminate it's fine. I guess it has a wide amount of application, at least, because of its ability to potentially interact with... I don't know. Who's it interacting with? Tibalt? There's no 3-casting cost to Fairy anymore. Narset? I guess killing Narset's pretty good if you're playing with Uro and Hydroid Crassus.
Yeah. I mean, I guess. I don't know, man. I just think, like, this has got to be, like, the first Niv Mizzet Reborn deck ever that just whiffs sometimes.
I mean, it's got a lot of air, right? Like, it's like 50% air and then, like, an additional, like, 30% conditional air.
So there was one other Standard deck, though, while we're kind of on the topic, that wanted to get your pick on Ethan Griffith's Sultai deck, which is basically Sultai, except instead of playing any of the cards that Sultai plays, instead, you still have like Nissa, Atris, and Uro, but change all the rest. So there's first of all, it's just 2 costs. There's just removal for days. 4 Aether Gust, 4 Heartless Act, 2 Eliminate, 4 enter the God Eternals. And then your green is just Paradise Druid, Lovestruck Beast in the main deck and Nissa. And then your only blue is Atris and Uro. What's going on here?
This deck is wild. Right? Like, here's the thing that's weird to me. Here's all really good cards. Like, this is a great card.
This is a bunch of good cards. There's like, not a bad card
among them. It's a bunch
them.
of aces, but, like, it's...
Well, there's a lot of A's.
Okay. There's a lot of B pluses also. But
yes.
These are good cards. Like, these are all good cards. But
definitely.
They're not the cards that you would think. They don't usually hang out in the same part of the yard together.
No, plus a lot of them are like... like in draft, you got your 22nd card, or your 23rd card, the ones that just barely get in. There's also in draft the 18th or 19th cards. You know when you pick it, it's going to be in your deck. But it's not like you're telling anybody about it, right? Like it's just, this is just a fine card. This deck is like a lot of 18th or 19th picks.
Yeah, so here's the thing. This deck is very biased, right?
You're right. This deck is metagamed into next Tuesday. This is a this is a person who is like, knows what they want to do in the world, who they want to be.
Yeah, they want to beat the red deck really bad, right? Like 4 Aether Gust and 4 Enter the God Eternals. Like, which is weird. I mean, is the red deck even a dominant player in Standard? I don't think of it as one.
I love that your look at this is the assumption that it must be red that they were going after and not green.
Green? I guess 4 Heartless Act to Eliminate is very good against green alongside 4 Aether Gust as well.
Like, so one of the most prevalent and successful decks recently, a good example of it is Lucas Giggs 5-0 mono green list. It's just straightforward. All the questing beasts, Lovestruck Beast, Garrick's Harbinger, Barkhide Troll, Vivian Arcbow Ranger, Stonecoil Serpent, Scavenging Ooze, Gem Razor Pelt Collector, and then the only spell Primal Might is nothing really. The only, like, if anything, the funkiness is the one Bonder's Enclave.
Yeah, I think, there's the Bonder's Enclave, and then I think Garrick's Harbinger, I mean, that's a played card, right? But it's not the most played card.
It's been gaining a lot of popularity since the bans. Ever since Teferi, Time Raveler can no longer bounce it. And ever since there, like, okay, so you know how, like, there was a lot of reason to play Teamer and Bant? And against Bant, Garrick's Harbinger isn't really doing anything. It just dies to, like, Elspeth Conquers Death, or it gets bounced by Teferi, or whatever. And against Red, it's not like Garrick's Harbinger does anything for you. It just dies to, like, Scorching Lava or whatever, right? But with the banning of Wilderness Reclamation, Growth Spiral, and Teferi, suddenly Black has skyrocketed, right? Like, Black has become the de facto support color because of your ability to access things like Eliminate, Heartless Act, and then a variety of great gold card options. Part of the reason that, like, we saw Ongrath's Rampage out of Random Jeweler earlier was because of Ongrath's Rampage. Like, that's a deck it's very smart about the fact, it's got 4 Ongrath's Rampage and 4 Deafening Clarion, both of which can actually kill Garrick's Harbinger. And it's not like Aether Gust can never do anything, and it's not like Thought Erasure never hits it. No, Garrick's Harbinger's gained a ton because of how much Eliminate and Heartless Act are kind of just, like, so foundational to the format right now.
Yeah, I think he's, like, pretty good. if
His
you're
weakness, of course, is Extinction Event.
yeah, it's just like I guess you play him. He's better than Yorvo. Similar power, very high upside, obviously against black decks. And then in this deck, there's a kind of this twofold thing where you've got the colorless pip on Garrick's Harbinger instead of maybe triple green if you're going to go the Yorvo direction, and then that actually has a double combo with Bonder's Enclave because he's conveniently the right size to make Bonder's Enclave good.
Oh yeah, yeah. What do you think though? Would you play Bonder's Enclave? I know you got some experience with these green decks.
There's only the one. I think like it. This is the kind of card that matters a lot in games that go long. And so the thing that I would ask myself before I chose to play Bonder's Enclave is, who am I going long against? If I'm going long against the mirror, but there's not just the mirror, there's also kind of the black, blue, green decks. I don't want to go long against them with Bonder's Enclave. This card is very good if you're going long against the mirror.
Right. Yeah, I think that part of the problem, you're never going to go back over the top of some of the really big decks. The Bonder's Enclave is for the small decks because you can already you can gum things up a bit. You got Love Struck Beast and Barkhide Troll, Stone Coil Serpent. Like you can slow it down a little bit. Bonder's Enclave gives you another thing that you can kind of like ride to victory against like, for instance, any of the red decks, including like Loyalty Betrayal actually had a kind of a sweet look at blue-red. This has kind of become a classic archetype, I suppose, in the last 3 or 4 years. But it's a bunch of flyers, most archetypally, I suppose, Stormwing Entity and Sprite Dragon. And how wild is it that Crackling Drake is just still legal? Doesn't it seem like forever ago that was what was just popping?
We previewed that card. That was ours.
Yeah, that was just what was popping, in the old days, before the apocalypse.
Remember, people just used to play decks that were just 8 Drakes. That was just their deck with some dive downs, and they called it a day.
Oh yeah. Do you remember when you used to just shuffle other people's decks?
Like you would touch physical Magic the Gathering cards? Weird.
Oh my! And you'd like pass packs around in a circle, everybody touching them.
Wow.
Yep. But what do you think? This archetype always kind of pops up, and there's always like little variations here and there.
It's a pretty unusual take on this deck. So
right, yeah.
Like decks with Force Bright Dragon and Storming Entity have been. I would say if I had to pick, quote unquote, this is the best deck in Standard, I'd probably say some version of Visit Aggro was the top deck in Standard, just based on what I'd seen in some recent events and a little bit of personal experience. This is an unusual take. I'm used to seeing people play the Arcanist. I'm used to people playing. Yep. What's the name of that enchantment that becomes a 3/3 when you cast a non-creature spell?
Oh yeah, like all plus, the gold cards too. Like this is just not even the same mix, right? Like this is both a lot of creatures. Not everybody's packing 14. But it's also not all the ones that, like, it's all fine. They're all good creatures, right?
This is the same as that Sultai deck we were talking about. Like, these are a lot of good cards, but they're different in configuration.
The spell mix is pretty straightforward, right? Like, even down to the, like, one Beacon Bolt, which pops up from time to time. Like, you're not playing Cathartic Reunion, but you got to cut something, right? But, like, if anything, I suppose Scorching Dragonfire is the metagame call, but that's not even, like, that's not wild or anything.
No, not at all. Frantic Inventory is. It's kind of medium in this deck. I think, like,
I don't know. Yeah, you don't like it?
I think. You never get. Never get it like you could.
But that can't be true. That can't be true. You would never play with this card if you never got it.
I guess you get it some, but you don't get it,
dude. You gotta have something to hope for.
Yeah, I think that this deck has reminded me that Terramander's in Standard. Terramander has fallen so deeply out of favor.
I love a good Terramander.
This deck's got a lot of ways to set Terramander up. It's got Opt at 1 mana. Shock is not the worst way to get Terramander down by 1, right? Like that's a pretty good 1-for-1 mana exchange. Crash Through even better for purposes of Terramander. I actually am gonna do a little exploration of this direction, because Terramander, in the context of Terramander potentially being good, is a very good card.
That's true. That's true. Hey, you played a bunch of Team or Adventure, right?
A lot, yes.
Right. Did you play the Great Henge main deck?
Yes.
Why don't more people do that? Tesla Cow seems to have adopted one copy, and I was wondering, do you play even more?
I think the last time I played, I think I might have had 2 main deck, or maybe I had 2 total. I don't recall. It's been a little while since I played Team or Adventure, but I mean, it's just such a good combo with Lovestruck Beast.
Right. But no, you don't feel too strongly about whether, because I know you've always been singing that card's praise.
Yeah, Great Henge is really good. I think people have gone weird directions with Team or Adventures. Like, I saw a version recently that was playing Cultivate, and that the whole angle on the deck was to get to either Nissa Who Shakes the World, which there's 4 copies of, which I thought was really wild in Team or Adventures, or the what's Explore the Wilds? Is that the name of it? The red green card that lets you play an extra land and then flip over a bunch of cards and play them over 2 turns. So just your
Escape to the Wild.
Escape to the Wild. Sorry, where you're just accelerating to these super powerful 5s that and so it just kind of is all right. It played all the hits, right? You still got the Lucky Clover to set up dubs and triples on Brazen Borrowers and stuff, but it just completely de-emphasized the Innkeeper sort of fair ground game that was historically half of the Adventure's strategy in favor of just higher card power. But I think that there's some incentive there, because really what you want to get with that deck is having the Clover in play and then starting to double up, or even more than double up, with Granted. That's really what the deck is about, right? The fact that you can double up on making a 1/1 token is cool. The fact that you can bounce 2 things is cool. But when you start demonic tutoring, once you've done it once, you win so often. If you do it 4 times or something, it's completely absurd. Because you just get access to these tools that are so enormously high leverage in individual matchups. You're okay, I'm going to get Shadow Spear in a matchup where life total matters, right? Or where somebody's trying to block me with 1/1 tokens. Or I'm going to get Fling in a situation where I know my opponent can't stop me from just going, gigantic Beanstalk Giant and 10 them in the face or something, right? So it's very surgical once you have enough mana. And so I think maybe a plan of cultivating and Beanstalk Gianting into that greater and greater mana engines is a potential way to go. Obviously, you're not going to do that at the same time as want to play the Great Henge. That's a lot of expensive cards if you do.
Yep. Oh, dude, I know this is a little bit kind of a left turn, but we got to check out Legacy, man. The 8/22 event, it's so sick that these are just real Magic cards. So, dude, Sammy Oddjob's 5/0 list. Without looking, first of all, can you tell me the text of Yuriko the Tiger Shadow?
Is that a ninja? I want to say it's a ninja.
It is a ninja. It's a human ninja.
No other clue of what
it has. Commander Ninjutsu, which doesn't come up that much in Legacy.
What is Commander Ninjutsu?
You can pay a blue and a black and return an unblocked attacker you control to your hand to put this card onto the battlefield from your hand or the command zone tapped and attacking. So it's like ninjutsu entirely in the scape of Legacy. The command zone is just not really a part of Legacy. You still get the ninjutsu, though.
So what is this deck doing?
Okay, so it's a ninja deck.
Ninjas.
Okay, so to start with, let's talk about the payoffs for all your ninjas before we get into who all your ninjas are. You've got Yuriko the Tiger Shadow, which, as we mentioned, has ninjutsu blue-black, and it's normally a 1 blue-black, 1/3. Its ability is the sick part, though, which is whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage to a player, reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to that card's converted mana cost.
Wow. Wait,
So this is a Ninja of the Deep Hours, right? Except it's a 1/3 instead of a 2/2. Its base is only 3 instead of 4. And instead of just drawing a card, you're Dark Confidanting, but with them losing the life, and it's not even targeted. And it's not just Yuriko that does it, it's literally all of your ninjas.
So I'm just looking at this card on the merits. This is, first of all, this card is just like basically Johnny Magic, right? So it's 1 blue and a black for a 1/3 that has an Ophidian-like ability.
It's got like 9 upsides compared to Shadow Mage Infiltrator.
But like in this format, you can like hit somebody and then you like 6 them, right? Like that's what's going on, right?
Well, I mean, what do you mean 6 them?
Like they're just taking a ton of damage.
Oh, yeah, more than 6. It's just 6 by himself because you're going to reveal Force of Will.
Yeah, that's what, or like Murderous Cut, right? It's like,
right.
Boom, 6. Like this is
right, but it's for all your ninjas. But okay, so that's not the end of our ninja payoffs. We've also got Ingenious Infiltrator, which is 2 blue black for a 2/3 with blue black ninjutsu, and whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So this is just Ninja of Deep Hours, except it's a 2/3 instead of a 2/2, and it's AoE. It's just all your ninjas.
Wait, so if you have both Ingenious Infiltrator and Yuriko the Tiger Shadow in play, so you have a 1/3 and a 2/3, you bash your opponent, you hit them for 3, you get both triggers twice.
So right, so you get 4 cards.
Draw 4 cards.
Takes like 7 or whatever.
Like nug twice?
Right. And that's just with these 2. The Ninja Lords are very strong. And then there's one more ninja in the deck, which is, Changeling Outcast. It's just black for a 1/1 Changeling. Changeling Outcast can't block and can't be blocked.
I mean, this card seems really, really vital, right? So it's a 1/1 for 1 that can't be blocked ever, right? So you just attack with it, meaning that it gets through unblocked. On turn 2, you could just Commander Ninjutsu or Ninjutsu one of your other guys into play, smash them, right? Like, I think that this is a very good ninja. And then when you replay it, if they're, going to get combat allowed, to get through, he counts as a ninja for, like, extra triggers next turn as well.
Oh, yeah. Plus, sometimes you don't even bounce the turn 1 Ingenious Infiltrator. You've got 4 Ornithopters. If you play the Infiltrator and the Ornithopter both on turn 1, on turn 2, you attack with the Ornithopter, you bounce it, and you ninjutsu either one of your Infiltrator or your Tiger Shadow, and now you're hitting your opponent for like 2 or 3 damage plus possibly more, but you're also drawing multiple cards already on turn 2. So this deck is mainly just trying to support how incredible that package is of Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow, and Ingenious Infiltrator. The other sort of funky card is Retrofitter Foundry, which is another one of the commander cards that it costs 1. It's an artifact with 3 to untap Retrofitter Foundry. It's got 2 in tap, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. It has 1 tap and sacrifice a servo to create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. And tap and sacrifice a Thopter to create a 4/4 colorless artifact creature token. So, first of all, you can just play Ornithopter and Retrofitter Foundry on turn 1, and you can upgrade your Ornithopter into a 4/4. At instant speed, you can just tap and sacrifice your Ornithopter and do that.
Oh, that's insane, because Ornithopter is a Thopter, right?
As is Ingenious Infiltrator. Now, you can't do the Infiltrator on turn 1, but it's kind of nice to be able to upgrade your 1/1 unblockable into a 4/4 sometimes for no extra mana.
I mean, the other thing is, like, if somebody doesn't know how this card works, right? Or, they just use removal on your incoming Ornithopter or something like that, it's also just a great time to sacrifice.
Yeah, plus this card is just a really good outpost. It costs 1, and then you tap it and pay 2 to get a 1/1. You can just do that every turn.
And it's also,
And if you ever get up to 5, you could, I guess you got to go a little higher. You can go up to 7, but like if the game stretches, that untap ability is like on, it's in the cards. It's not that prevalent of a thing. You're mostly using it for the make a 1/1 or the 4/4 ability.
yeah. I think that you want to make a lot of servos. You don't really want to make a lot of Thopters, but if you've got a Thopter, making a construct seems pretty great.
Totally. And sometimes the way your mana lines up, you can just do it that way. Like, for instance, if you got 4 mana laying around, sometimes what you'll be able to do is pay 1 and tap this and sacrifice a servo to get a Thopter, then pay 3 and untap this, and then tap it and sacrifice your Thopter to get a 4/4, just to use your mana efficiently.
I mean, this card seems really good.
Yeah, of course. It's just ridiculously undercosted. This and like 100 other cards that they printed where they're like, well, since we don't have to put this in a real set, we can just extremely undercost it, invalidating old cards and selling new. Anyway, yes, this card is really strong.
And this deck has got some of the classics. It's got 4 Ponders, 4 Brainstorms.
Dude, plus you can actually bounce Baleful Strix. That's kind of a sweet one to ninjutsu. Like Baleful Strix, which is another card that is totally realistic. They probably would have just put it in standard, but they just hadn't got around to it yet. It's a very realistic blue-black 1/1 flying death touch. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card.
I mean, they made this card again last year.
No, man.
Yeah, they did.
No, not like this. Not like this. Dude, 1/1 flying death touch, draw a card?
Did the Coatl basically the same thing?
That's not illegal in standard either.
But we're talking about Legacy.
Dude, plus, okay. It's not like you even always have the Snowlands, but anyway, yeah, Baleful Strix, super good card to bounce with your ninjutsu cards.
How insane is the card selection available to this deck that this is literally a ninjutsu deck, meaning its goal in life is to have an evasion creature that it bounces back to hand, that Baleful Strix is only good enough for a 2 of in this deck. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. That's because on turn 2, you just want to be ninjutsuing one of your guys,
This seems like such a great deck. It's seems really powerful. And also,
they just made 4 new cards. None of them are realistic cards that all just cost 3 mana less. Of course, yeah, it's really strong. It is possible to just make up fan fiction cards that are strong enough. Anyway, dude, plus it's got all the 0 mana counter spells.
Yeah.
Like Force of Negation, a totally real Magic card. Oh my God, dude, I'm losing it. At least Days was legal at one point.
Again, here's another card that is only good enough for a 2 of. I don't know. Is 1 Cling to Dust really, you would rather have that than like more Days, more Baleful Strix action? I don't know. I mean, it's a cool thing to be able to do sometimes, but
Yeah, I don't know. That's a little surprising to me. I guess sometimes you got to keep it funky with your graveyard hate. Like maybe there's a situation where you can actually just like, yeah, I don't know, man.
I mean, Cling to Dust is like almost not like a real Magic card, also, right? Like it's just this card where you can play it in any deck that you kind of.
No, but it was legal.
Yeah, I know.
That makes it a real Magic card, right? Unlike Force of Despair, Plague Engineer, Force of Negation, Retrofitter Foundry, Baleful Strix, Changeling Outcast, Ingenious Infiltrator, Yuriko the Tiger Shadow. Like, unlike all of those cards, which were never in like real set, anyway.
So you're saying this deck is like 75% Fiona and Cake, like no Finn and Jake?
I have no idea what that means.
Fiona and Cake are the gender-bent version of Finn and Jake from Adventure Time.
I have no idea what that means. I know what gender bent means. I think Adventure Time is like a cartoon.
It is a cartoon. Some people out there got it. We can move on if you're not a fan of Adventure Time.
I know I'm a fan like from a distance, I suppose. I'm just not familiar yet. I'm sure it's super dope. I'm like damn near 60. I'm just out of the loop. I don't know, man. Yeah, this deck's it's got a lot of really strong cards, many of which are, very mana efficient.
That Ristro Fitter Foundry is not a regular card. How do you have an outpost for this mana?
Okay, you want a regular card? How about Ethereal Forager? Lord Muffin's pack an Ethereal Forager in the Delver of Secrets deck, and why not? I don't know why we weren't playing this Delve card back in the day, We thought Tassiger was a big deal. But like 4 blue, 3/3 flying Delve, Elemental Whale if you care. It's a 3/3 flyer that when it attacks, you may return an instant or sorcery card exiled with Ethereal Forager to owner's hand. Like, when you delve.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
How is there only one of this card in this deck?
Because the whole format is busted.
This card is unbelievable.
Yes.
It's a 3/3 flying for 2, draw 4 cards.
Well, it doesn't always come to that. But yeah, it's a Delver of Secrets that's pre-flipped and just like draws a card. Like it just Eternal Witnesses every time it attacks.
I mean, not for nothing. If you're going to play cards like this, don't you like invest in a Thought Scour?
I don't know. I guess you could just cast cards like Brainstorm, Lightning Bolt, and Fatal Push.
I like a Ponder.
This card is your 3-drop. You like the Ponder?
Ponder and Preordain are fine. I think like at some point, if you're playing cards like Ethereal Forager,
there's no way in the world you're playing Thought Scour in this deck over Preordain, Ponder, or Brainstorm.
All right,
maybe, but like you'd have to have a lot more. You'd have to have a lot more Ethereal Forager action. If you played like the full package of Ethereal Foragers, you can make a case for it over Preordain. But I don't know, man.
I'm just trying to get over the fact that you could Force of Will them and then just cast this and then get back your Force of Will.
Yeah.
It's like
totally realistic.
Usually cards like this are like, at least there's like a cost restriction, right? Like you have something like Dreadhorde Arcanist where, it can only get a 1, unless you make him big. No, you can just any casting cost, just get it back for free. No biggie.
Can I just respect? They've got both a Mystic Sanctuary and a Winter Orb in the sideboard. I love that. First of all, I always love land in the sideboard. That's that's somebody with discriminating tastes plays land in the sideboard. But second of all, Winter Orb out of the sideboard. That's a throwback joint. You don't see that too often anymore.
I love Winter Orb in the sideboard.
I know. That seems so sweet. Don't they play like 57 land or whatever in some of those decks? Just Winter Orb, man.
I mean, if you're a deck that's got like Force of Will and Force of Negation and sideboard more Force of Negation, like basically you can interact with whatever the opponent is doing for 0 mana, and the thing that they might be doing might be costing, I don't know, any amount of mana more than 0. Winter Orb seems really good. It's got like Submerge. Like there's tons of stuff that costs nothing.
Yeah.
You know what's hilarious about this deck? It's got like this crazy powerful Ethereal Forager. It's got like Delver of Secrets, which is just the highest rolling, high rolling 1-drop ever. And it's just like, let's play Painful Truths in the sideboard. Might as well. Fair 3 casting cost, sometimes draw 3 card drawing spell. It's sorcery speed. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, dude. So Madmind 88 has a deck that, can you believe this fake card? Oko, Thief of Crowns. So this card's just 1 green blue 4 loyalty. It's a planeswalker.
Wait, hold on. It has 4 loyalty for only 3? Like, does it have no abilities?
Oh, yeah. No, but its first ability is +2 to make food. Pay 2, you can gain 3 life. Or its second ability, target artifact or creature loses all abilities and becomes a green elk. Its base power and toughness 3/3. And this is a -1. Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. It's a +1.
It gains loyalty with this ability? Wait, hold on a second. So you're saying I played this, it's only 3 casting cost. I'm at 6 loyalty the first turn that it's out, and I've already got an extra permanent. But I can now turn that into a 3/3 attacker that has pseudo haste while going to 7 basically loyalty? Is that what you're saying?
Dude, I'm not sure I'm even saying that. I'm just saying that they got to stop making these cards without putting them in real sets. Nobody's ever going to believe that Oko Thief of Crowns could just be a card.
Well, hate to break it to you, Patrick. This card managed to win a Pro Tour or so before somebody else figured that out.
The only other 2 parts, one, there's not too much to dig into it, but I just want to, shout out to Bone Crusher Giant showing up in Legacy in the, those mono red decks that are just like a bunch of Blood Moons and Chalice of the Voids, and then like some sweet red cards that cost between 3 and 5.
Yeah, because you can't play correct casting costs because you might turn them off with your own Chalice of the Void. But on the other hand, you've got 4 City of Strangers, 4 Ancient Tomb, so you can...
And 4 Simian Spirit Guide, 4 Chrome Mox.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Don't mulligan with this deck.
No. And then the other one is Taku Mio is packing a Lurin. So it's got Arkham's Astrolabe, totally realistic, believable card from, I'm sure it's in lower powered formats. But this deck kind of is just wild, right? Like, we all remember, Palace Jailer's oppressive reign on Standard, but the ability to use Recruiter of the Guard to go get it whenever you want it most, that's like... Also, Baron Tolarian Archmage is a big level up for Alurin, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember you beating me up with Alurin 20 years ago. Speaking of you pushing 60. Literal 20 years ago.
And then, dude, when you're Alurin... In my day, we didn't have things like Baleful Strix and Icefang Codal to, like, be our card-drawing cards for Alurin, man. We played the Raven Familiar or something, But I suppose. And why bother play Acceleration when you can just put... Also, Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath? That's a pretty sweet one, right?
Is it...
Get you ahead. No, it dies, definitely. But you do get to draw a card. So, it drew you a card... which is all you want in this world, right? But it also gains you 3 life, and it let you put a land into play from your hand untapped.
Wait,
so you can get ahead in mana, but also with the trigger on the stack, you can play Baron Tolarian Archmage and then bounce your Uro.
Yeah, that was what I was saying. I don't think it necessarily dies.
You could Cavern Harpy too.
3 casting cost stuff is if it has flash, right? So you can play it, do all that stuff, which
Well, what's really good is gaining 3 life so that you can pay 1 life for your Cavern Harpy.
So is it Uro and Cavern Harpy and Alurin by themselves? Is that just a loop? Those 3 cards?
Alurin with Recruiter of the Guard is a loop.
Just those 2 cards.
Right. You can just go Alurin, Recruiter of the Guard, then you Recruiter of the Guard, go get Baron, and then you Baron, bounce your Recruiter of the Guard, then you go get Cavern Harpy, then you Cavern Harpy, bounce your Baron, then you bounce your Recruiter, then you Recruiter, and you go get Uro, and you can do the whole thing.
How is this a beatable deck?
Dude, Alurin costs 4. I don't know. All these cards are unbeatable, right? Every deck in Legacy is so strong.
I think I would err more heavily on the Teferi Time Raveler aspect of the deck. Just use my Noble Hierarch to get that out quickly so that I could just resolve my Alurin and go off. That seems...
Dude, force of will, force of negation. Yeah.
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 This is not... I don't understand. This doesn't seem like a beatable deck to me. This is ridiculous. Like, it's not... Most of the time, when you're playing like a 2-card combo deck, which this deck can kind of be a 2-card combo deck, if you could just consider Allurin plus Recruiter the guard, right?
It's definitely a 2-card combo deck.
Like,
Allurin and Recruiter, you win.
The 2-card combo decks usually are like lots of nonsense, right? So it's 3-card combo decks that have good cards usually, right? 2-card combo decks are like, well, I had a lot of cards that don't exist outside the, just this core thing so that I can go off against you. But this deck is basically all real cards, except for Allurin itself, which is half of the 2-card combo and makes everything extra real.
Dude, we haven't even got to the best part. So, Recruiter of the Guard, that's an awesome enters the battlefield ability, right? Icefang Codal, awesome enters the battlefield. Eternal Witness, Baron, Baleful Strix, Arkham's Astroab. That sure is a lot of enters the battlefield abilities for this 80-card deck with Yorion.
Oh, wow. I didn't even realize it was an 80-card deck.
Dude, it's so sick being an 80-card deck with these one-ofs you don't actually want to draw. You draw them less often. Dude, it's not clear you don't want 80 anyway. Yorion's just the icing on the cake.
I was in love when we had gotten to the Ninja deck. I new deck of the week. Takumi,
no question.
Takumi 0206. This is the end of this week's episode. You are deck of the week. 80-card infinite combo, 2-card combo. I don't even know what other appellations to heap upon this deck. It's cool as anything.
Keep legacying on. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge for jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends were the key to find. Magic gave me purpose and drive to gain